What's up, gingos? Today I want to talk about the idea of that everything is a game. Everything is just a bunch of systems, and if you do them consistently and persistently enough, you'll win in them. And I know that sounds crazy because I was like, I know you've heard of the idea of like gamify. Like all these really like successful people, a lot of them, especially in tech, they talk about the idea of like gamifying certain things that are necessary in life for them to succeed. And once you do that, it becomes easier because we're like, if you played video games before, they're like very addicting. It's like this, even if the game is not that fun, the idea of just getting better and unlocking new things and just having a better strategy and leading your team to a victory or whatever, right? Being the top of the leaderboard. It's like, there's so much things within a video game that make it addicting. And it's like, it was made like that for a reason, right? So if you can make things in real life like a game, you start getting obsessed. And then if you're obsessed with something that helps you, you're bound to succeed, right? So I know people that will like struggle with business, struggle with girls, struggle with the gym, and they'll make them all into games, right? And what I've realized, right, is if you can figure out the systems that are needed in order to succeed in whatever field you're trying to succeed in, then it becomes a game and you'll naturally just succeed, right? And the second thing is everything's actually just a bunch of systems for success, right? And what I mean by this, right? So I feel like a lot of times people will say one of the biggest like things that one of the easiest things you can focus on early in life is, in terms of self-improvement, is the gym, because the gym isn't like some like very crazy thing that you got to figure out. It's just you go into the gym, you work out, you do it for a long enough time, and you'll see the gains, right? So it's very easy to see what the hard work that you input, you'll get the outcome that you want eventually, right? It makes everything a lot more surreal, right? And it also like gives you a better time horizon, because you understand like, you won't see gains in a month, you won't see gains in 3 months, but in 6 months you'll see some progress. In a year you'll see a lot of progress, and in 2 years, once it becomes enjoyable or a hobby or whatever, not only will you become obsessed with it because now you're good at it, but it's a lifestyle, right? And you can also apply that sort of like mindset towards everything. Like, a month in business you might not make any money, 3 months in business you might not make any money, but 6 months you might have a couple clients. In a year you might be profitable, right? And it's the same thing, right? Everything takes time. Everything, people don't just get successful overnight. That's a bullshit lie the media feeds you, right? Everybody that's successful, it's been a long time they've been putting in the work for, right? And a gym just makes that concept of time that much more real and easier to apply in other facets, right? And so for me, when I figured out how to work out, right, in the gym, right, how to lose weight, how to put on muscles and become aesthetic or whatever, right, I've realized, like, I don't know if you've ever noticed it with for me, the way I'm going to describe it is, for the system, like if I really wanted to, I can take a fat guy, make him lose a bunch of weight, and then put on a bunch of muscle, because that's exactly what I did, right? There's a system in place that if I just gave him the system, the program, he would be able to do it with enough time and consistency, right? And being persistent with it, right? And if you think about it, the same thing can happen with girls in business, right? And that's the whole idea of like what all these guys are like selling you courses for, right? They're selling you courses on how to make money, essentially how to do a business, right? So like these guys who do like social media marketing agencies or like drop shipping or whatever, right? These are all business models that they're teaching you, right? Because it's just a bunch of systems. If you do the system, you can become successful. And the hard part is just like if you actually enjoy doing it and if you can do it for a long enough period of time. That's the hard part, right? So that you need to figure out what you actually like. Nonetheless, right, it's all systems. And I feel like I've had enough interactions with women where I've seen the same thing work over and over and over again, and it's baffling to me, because you would think, right, for me, I would be like, oh yeah, this girl's more attractive than this one, so she might act a little bit different, or this girl has a different personality, so I might have to like change the way I talk to her or whatever, right? It sounds a little bit crazy, but for how different each girl looks and acts and things, you would think you wouldn't be able to use the same tactics or strategies upon them, but that's not the case, because it works every single time. Like, if you've interacted with multiple women in your life, you've known that if you can literally give women, right, like let's just say an example, right, there's like 5 women, one's a 5, one's a 7, one's a 8, one's a 9, one's a 10, right, and they all have different personality. One's a goth, one's a gym girl, one's a lawyer, one's, right, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? If you literally give them like a compliment, they will all react the same way, and they'll all be a little bit more open towards you or whatever, right? And like if you ever watched Nick Nayarcina, right, one of the guys from Nelk or whatever, he went around to bunch of different women, random women, right, and he would say, "Oh my God, you have such nice eyebrows," right, and this pickup line literally worked on every single one of these girls, right, and they were all excited because it was like something they typically didn't hear, right? If you say something like fuck shit, like, "Oh, you have such a sexy body," or something, that's too sexual, right, or whatever. But if you say like he somehow made a generic line seem not so generic because it was such a unique line to hear, right? And like with me personally, right, I've had interaction with enough women where I'll say the same things over and over again, like the same story or the same line, and every single time they laugh and they go, "Oh, you're so silly," this and that or whatever, right? And they start like eating it up. Nonetheless, that made me realize, in theory, if you can figure out the system that works for you, you can apply it to anyone and anywhere, right? And that just makes everything a game, because then in theory, once you figure out the system, then it just becomes a volume game, right? If you figure out how you can approach and talk to women and the stories and lines to use that will always work, like you use it on like 2 or 3 women and you realize, oh, they all laughed, they all gave me their number, they all want to go on a date or whatever, right? You know those lines work, you know those stories work, you know they make them laugh. And then you just start, then it's a volume game. So every girl you go up to, you just start using these same lines, and the same thing's gonna happen. It doesn't matter if she's more attractive, less attractive, if she's smarter or dumber, if she has a better personality or worse, it doesn't matter. It's so baffling because we're all human, right? So in terms of like every girl that you interact with, they're all girls. They all have a brain. They all are human, right? So if you can technically, like the lines that you're using are like psychologically hacking them per se, right? I know that sounds crazy, but it's like, it's the same thing comedians do, right? Comedians will talk about how they will start at some small club and they tell a bunch of stories and a bunch of jokes and a bunch of lines, right? And then the ones that actually hit, the ones that make the crowd laugh or whatever, right? They write them down. And, then they go to like 10, 15, 20 different clubs, right? And they constantly use different lines. And the ones that work seem to always work. And the ones that don't work seem to never work, right? And they cut those out completely, right? So you're doing the same thing. You're essentially figuring out ways to make whatever system works for you work for you, right? And it just sounds so interesting to me, because you would think with how many different factors there are in everything, business, the gym, the girls, right? So like in business, right, how much money you want to make, or the business model you're using, or who you're targeting, right? In gym, right, how fat you are, how skinny you are, what gender you are, how far the gym is like. And with girls, right, the personality, the looks, the intelligence, right? There's so many different factors in each one of these things, no matter what method you use, but it doesn't matter, because all of it is just a matter of systems that you need to figure out. And that means there's lots of trial and error, right? So you need to like say with the girl thing, because it's the easy one thing, right? Say you use a pickup line. I'm not saying you use pickup lines, right? I think the best way for you to use this would be to like tell them a story about yourself, personal, or have like a way to approach them or whatever, and see which ones actually work and which ones like give you a good vibe per se with the girl. And then you would constantly use the same story or whatever, right? And so like with me, I've said the same story with a couple of different girls and they've laughed every single time. And then, if you can make a girl laugh, they like you a little bit more, right? Everybody likes when you make them laugh, right? And so like you can essentially, even not even just girls, even if you're trying to make friends, like if you can figure out a funny story that's actually true and you can tell it well, you can literally tell it to anyone and everyone and they'll always laugh. And like, yes, you have a couple of outliers, maybe they don't get the joke, whatever the case may be. But point is, figure out the systems that work for you and then apply it to the volume, right? And volume as in like just do it a lot, right? Scale. You tried it on 3 different girls, 3 of the girls laughed. Now you can try it on 10 girls, 15 girls, 30 girls, 50 girls, 100 girls, and you start pulling all of them, right? And it's like, it's crazy to me. Nonetheless, that's why I feel like in life, success per se is just figuring out the system and then doing it. First of all, figuring out how the system works and what system works for you, and then just doing it consistently and persistently, perfecting the system. So like whether it's telling the story or using the pickup line or figuring out the business model or whatever the case may be, right? And then you just apply it to volume and scale, and then now you're successful because you're doing it at such big scales, and it makes sense. It has to make sense to you, right? Life is a game. Everything is just a bunch of systems. Figure out the system that works for you, and in the end, we're gonna fucking win. I'm telling you, shit is crazy. We're all gonna fucking win in the end.